I never imagined my BFF's brother would be a CEO. I'm torn between love and a shocking secret. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced as I stood in the bustling lobby of a skyscraper, the kind where glass glinted like ice under the harsh sunlight. Mark. Nick's brother, my tormentor, my crush, now a man in a crisp suit. A suit that smelled like power and success. I blinked hard, hoping to shake the feeling of disbelief. Years ago, he was just Nick's older brother, the cool guy with the tousled hair, always tossing a basketball. Now, he was a CEO, responsible for lives and money, the kind of man you read about in glossy magazines. But why did it make my chest tighten? I could hear the package of secrets crumbling behind my ribs. Mark caught my eye. My breath stuck in my throat. I remembered late-night talks, the way his laughter danced in the air, how his smile made the world around us dim. I shook my head, trying to brush off the familiar warmth curling in my stomach. This was serious. I had come here for a meeting about a charity event Nick was planning. Nick, my best friend since childhood, who had always been the glue holding our trio together. But seeing Mark in this role, standing among shiny executives, made my pulse race for all the wrong reasons. His piercing gaze locked onto mine, and for a moment, the crowd faded. My heart pounded against my ribcage. He smiled, a flash of recognition mixed with something darker. Then, out of nowhere, an electric silence wrapped around us. The air felt heavy. It was just the two of us in that chaotic space, glances from people sliding past us like whispers. Did they see what I saw? The secrets threading between us? Suddenly, a commotion at the elevator drew my attention. An argument, hushed voices rising. I strained to hear words tossed around like grenades fired and disgraced. Then, a name I recognized croaked out, someone we both knew. My heart raced faster. What was going on? Mark's expression hardened. In that instant, shadows flickered across his face, a man torn between loyalty and ambition. My gut tightened. I stepped closer, daring to breach the distance, to grasp the tension that hummed between us. Mark, what are they talking about? My voice was barely a whisper, but I could feel the weight of it. His eyes darkened, and my hands trembled slightly as I awaited his response. He opened his mouth but hesitated. It was that pause, that moment between unsaid words, that left me grasping at straws. Confusion enveloped me like a fog, thick and suffocating. The world outside continued, but in that heart-stopping flicker of time, I was left to wonder what secrets lay beneath the smooth surface of his new life, what was hidden behind that sophisticated facade. Love? Fear? Or something much more dangerous? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The atmosphere crackled with an unsaid tension, the kind that permeates when the air grows heavy with unvoiced fears. As Mark's hesitation stretched into an uncomfortable silence, I felt the gravity of the room shift. My palms felt clammy, and the tremor of uncertainty echoed in the depths of my stomach. This beautiful, powerful man had secrets that coiled around him like ivy, and I found myself ensnared in the sticky web of it all. What do you mean, Mark? I pressed on, desperation tainting my voice as the familiar warmth I felt for him mingled with the chill of alarm. The elevator doors slid shut behind him as if sealing him away from the turmoil of the outside world. The rest of our shared history had become a mere ghost, leaving me shadowed by the weight of the present. He swallowed hard, his fingers twitching at his sides. It's complicated, he finally managed, his voice low and laced with tension. You shouldn't be here. A hollow pit formed in my chest, and for a moment, it felt as though he had physically pushed me away. What about Nick? I thought this was all about the charity event. My heart sank. How could his world have grown so treacherous without warning? Some things are beyond his understanding. Beyond yours. His words held the undertones of a wall being erected, one that separated us not just from the truth but from each other. My heart pleaded for us to step closer, yet everything in him screamed caution. The crowd in the lobby buzzed with frenetic energy, but all I could focus on was the stark reality between us. I remembered long afternoons spent sprawled on the floor, talking about our dreams that had been naive, pure, and untouched by the ruthless demands of adulthood. What had happened to that innocent boy with the enchanting smile? Before I could retort, a figure burst through the lobby. It was Sarah, one of the event coordinators, a small whirlwind of chaos wrapped in designer attire. She spotted us and rushed over, breathless. "Mark. Have you seen the latest numbers? We're not hitting our targets. There's a crisis brewing with some of the sponsors." Mark's face shifted, a mask of professional poise slipping back over his features. "I'll handle it, Sarah. Please, give me a moment." He turned back to me, eyes turbulent. "I really need to go. I can't explain right now, but don't think about this, don't think about it." I echoed incredulously. "Mark, you can't just walk away. This means something, doesn't it? You need to tell me what's going on." But he was already backing away, the distance between us deepening like a chasm. "Just trust me," he said, urgency in his tone. And without another word, he turned and vanished into the throng of people. Frustration surged through me like a warm tide, but no amount of it could suppress the worry gnawing at the edges of my mind. I felt like flipping tables, shouting for the world around me to recognize that something was deeply wrong beneath the glimmering surface of corporate success. Nick would be coming soon, he expected to see me here, to find comfort in the familiar. But what if I had stumbled upon a fracture that would change the course of our lives? My phone buzzed in my pocket, drawing me from my spiraling thoughts. I fumbled it out, and to my surprise, it was a text from Mark, sent a heartbeat after he left. "Meet me at the corner cafe. I need to explain and tell Nick." The inkling of dread resurfaced, mixing with a tinged thrill of hope. What could possibly await me in the unassuming cafe, where our childhood laughter had once spilled over cups of cocoa? I was nervous, but I couldn't resist the pull, the desire to plunge into his world yet again, even knowing secrets lie beneath. As I threaded my way through the crowd towards the cafe, I could feel the words "don't tell Nick" curling around my consciousness. Was I assuring Mark of my loyalty or dragging the shadows between us into the light? Something teased me, a single thread that had broken, and I couldn't yet see the tapestry that would unfold. Upon arriving at the cafe, I paused at the entrance, an instinctive apprehension gripping me tightly. The smell of freshly brewed coffee had once been a comfort, but today it sent a ripple of anxiety down my spine. I glanced around, searching for a glimpse of Mark, and just as I settled at a table, my heart lurched. There he was, standing near the window, a storm brewing behind his eyes as he locked onto mine, his stance unyielding yet vulnerable. And when I saw the figure standing beside him, my heart plummeted. Sarah, with an intent I had only ever seen in the midst of chaos. It was too late to turn back. Secrets began their dance in my chest as I walked toward them. But a piece of me knew, even then, that this meeting could unravel everything I thought I knew. Mark's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite pin down as I approached, a tumultuous sea of emotions brewing beneath the surface. Sarah's presence felt like a thundercloud hanging over us, an unwelcome guest in a conversation that was already teetering on the edge of catastrophe. When I reached the table, I forced a smile, even though my heart raced with dread. "Hey," I greeted, trying to sound normal despite the tension curling through the air. "Thank you for coming," Mark said, his voice steady but the tightness around his mouth betrayed his anxiety. There was something weighty about the way he held himself, like he was preparing to absorb a storm. I looked at Sarah, who leaned against the wall, arms crossed in a manner that screamed impatience. "What's going on?" I asked, turning back to Mark, my protective instincts flaring. He exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, and then returned his gaze to me. "We have to talk about the charity and the sponsors and everything that led to this moment." Mark hesitated, his brow lightly furrowing. "But it's a lot more complicated than I can explain right now." I felt a shiver of apprehension creep up my spine. "Complicated?" I echoed, my hands growing clammy in my lap. "It's always complicated with you lately. If there's something happening behind all of this." "Look," Sarah interjected, cutting into my thoughts sharply, her voice suddenly cold. "This isn't just about you two. Lives are at stake. Trust me." Her words hung heavy in the air. It felt like a warning disguised as concern, and it sent a shudder through my already frayed nerves. Mark released a shaky breath, his shoulders slumping a fraction. "Sarah's right. The charity event is in jeopardy, but there's something much deeper going on. I've been juggling deals and threats I can't even begin to describe, more than just financial troubles." My stomach twisted violently as I took in his words, dancing between distress and an uncanny urgency to unearth the truth. "What do you mean by threats?" I pressed slowly, afraid of the answer but knowing I had to ask. "There are people who want to sabotage," Mark started, but Sarah stepped forward, her tone sharp enough to cut the tension. "Stop," she warned, shaking her head. "This is not the time." Mark's hands balled into fists, the tension radiating off him like a palpable force that enveloped us. "Then when, Sarah? When is the time to be honest? Because hiding from the truth is only going to make it worse." I could see the raw hurt in his expression, a man wrestling with demons he had long kept hidden. I wanted to reach out, to reassure him that whatever it was we could face together, and yet a gnawing doubt festered in my mind. "What haven't you told me, Mark?" I asked softly, my voice trembling slightly as I leaned forward. Each word held the weight of the unspoken promises between us. "Is this why you didn't want me to tell Nick?" His silence was deafening, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if the entire cafe was holding its breath along with me. A single tear escaped, trailing down my cheek unexpectedly as I braced myself against what might follow. Their secrets, now dangerously intertwined with my own heart, felt like a ticking time bomb. Just then, the bell above the cafe door chimed. I glanced back, startled. A hooded figure stepped inside, a stark contrast to the sunlight spilling through the glass. I couldn't quite catch their expression, but something about their presence felt ominous. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she instinctively moved closer to Mark, fear radiating from her demeanor as if she sensed something I couldn't yet identify. The figure scanned the cafe, their gaze landing on our table. My breath caught in my throat as they took a step forward, pulling back their hood to reveal a familiar face, one I hadn't seen in years. "Mark," the newcomer said, their voice steady but carrying an unsettling chill. "We need to talk." Now, the air thickened around us, and in that moment, everything I thought I understood came crashing down like a house of cards. As the weight of the revelation settled, dread transformed into cold, chilling clarity. I didn't just walk into a mess of hidden truths, I had stumbled into the eye of the storm itself. As the hooded figure took a step deeper into the cafe, Mark's expression morphed from surprise to simmering anger in a heartbeat. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, igniting an anxiety that reached out, pulling at my insides, as if the room itself had started to close in around us. "Evelyn," Mark breathed, disbelief and fury battling in his eyes. The name fell from his lips like a jagged stone, and I could almost hear the crack in his resolve. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn, a name that conjured up fragments of laughter at family gatherings, bright holidays, and the easy companionship of siblings. But now, standing there with an all-too-familiar edge of authority, she felt achingly foreign. My mind raced with memories, twisting them into something unrecognizable against the sharpness of the moment. "That I came to warn you," she said, her tone piercing. "It's not just sponsorship deals at stake anymore. They're after you, Mark." My heart quickened, the words echoing in my mind like a fractured bell tolling doom. I glanced at Sarah, whose usually steely demeanor had slipped, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't expected. She nodded, perhaps in defense or agreement, unable to mask the disquiet that had settled over her like a thick fog. "What do you mean?" Mark demanded, his voice half defiant and half desperate, like a dog trapped in a corner. "No time for details," Evelyn said, stepping closer, urgency tinging her voice. "Just trust me. The risks have escalated. I couldn't stay in the shadows any longer. They're coming after anyone involved with the charity, and you're in deeper than you realize." Fear bloomed like a wildflower amidst the chaos of my thoughts. I wanted to scream, to shake Mark and force him to wake up to the reality swirling around him. The charity had always been painted as a beacon of light, a bastion of hope, but now it felt like a trap, woven with dark threads of deceit and danger. Mark's gaze didn't waver from Evelyn's, though I could see his facade slipping slightly. "You shouldn't have come," he finally said, tension etching every word. I swallowed hard, looking back and forth between them. "What do we do?" I whispered as if voicing the question would shrink the magnitude of our precarious situation. Evelyn turned her steely gaze toward me, her expression softening just a fraction. "You should get somewhere safe. Both of you. I'll handle this. But first, you need to trust me. All of you." Trust felt like a fragile thing at that moment, something easily broken yet desperately sought after. As I looked between Mark and Evelyn, conflict tugged at my heart, forcing a wedge between my instincts. Mark opened his mouth, then hesitated, his thoughts flitting like butterflies trapped inside a glass jar. "What about the charity event?" "It's in just a few days," he said, the concern in his voice suddenly palpable. "It's too dangerous," Evelyn insisted firmly, slipping back into her authoritative tone. "We're running out of time." Mark. A silence fell between us, heavy with the weight of secrets and unspoken fears. I felt my heart racing, uncertain of what lay ahead. The very foundation on which I believed our lives were constructed had tilted sharply, leaving us teetering on the precipice. I could see Mark grappling with the enormity of it all, his brow knit in a way that betrayed his struggle. "We can't just abandon everything we've worked for or risk losing everything and everyone we care about in the process," Evelyn countered sharply. I looked at Sarah, her eyes swam with unshed tears, and it struck me that this rivalry, this storm, had already cost us so much. Relationships were fraying at the edges, and I could sense the fractures deepening. Just then, the cafe's door swung open again, flooding the space with light, as a couple of patrons walked in. What felt like a cocoon of secrets now lurked on a precipice open to the world, and as their laughter and chatter filled the air, I realized we were drawing dangerously close to a moment of exposure. "There's no time," Evelyn said urgently. "We need to leave now." I met Mark's gaze, searching for a sign of clarity, and perhaps a glimmer of hope amidst the tumult. But what I found in his eyes was not certainty, it was fear, a reflection of my own. "Are you coming with us?" I asked, needing to know. Mark hesitated, the conflict etched painfully on his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could form the words, something shifted. A sharp sound split the air, a crash, followed by shouts outside the cafe shattering the tense moment like glass, and my heart sank. Looking towards the door, dread washed over me. This was no longer just a conversation caught in turmoil, but the harbinger of chaos knocking insistently at our door, a chaos we could no longer avoid. The cafe had transformed into a shell, a fragile bubble that felt dangerously close to bursting. The commotion outside escalated, screams mingling with the sounds of glass shattering, plates clattering, and the frantic rustling of feet scrambling for safety. Instinctively, I grabbed Mark's hand, squeezing it as if to anchor myself against the rising tide of fear that threatened to sweep us all away. "Evelyn!" Mark shouted amidst the chaos, the urgency in his voice pulling me back to the moment. "What's happening out there?" Evelyn's eyes flickered with a mix of determination and panic. "They're here," she hissed, urgency bleeding through her words as she turned towards the exit. "We need to go now." Before any of us could react, several men burst into the cafe, faces obscured by masked shadows of menace that seemed to siphon all hope from the room. I pressed closer to Mark, who instinctively stepped in front of me, a protective instinct surging to the fore. On the floor One of the intruders shouted, the sharpness of his command slicing through the panic like a knife. People scrambled, some dropping to the floor in shock, while others hesitated, caught up in disbelief. I felt the world slowing, the air thick with dread as Evelyn moved swiftly, her demeanor sharp and focused. She pulled a trembling Sarah to her feet, her eyes steely but not unyielding. "They won't hurt anyone if we cooperate," Evelyn vowed, her voice steady despite the fear threading through the cafe. "Just do what they say." The intruders were scanning the room, calculating, their presence an iron shackle that clamped down on our fear and forced our hearts into a muted rhythm of dread. I couldn't look away from them, each movement with sinister precision, and in that moment, all I could think about was how far we had fallen from our once small-town lives filled with laughter and warmth. Suddenly, one of the men glanced toward me, and my breath hitched as I met his gaze. There was a flicker of recognition, a glimmer of something more than just malice. My stomach dropped. I twisted my fingers in Mark's hand, the tension palpable. "Turn your phone off, or we'll make an example out of someone," another intruder barked, gesturing with a gun that sparkled in the light of the cafe. I fumbled, my heart racing. Before doing as I was told, Mark's grip tightened, and I felt a wave of fear wash over us both. In the distance, I could hear sirens wailing, drawing near, but the urgency of that promise felt fleeting as adrenaline surged through the air. Hope was dimming, drowning beneath the weight of our circumstances. Evelyn was moving again, her voice rising above the chaos. "We need to stay calm. They're after Mark. If we don't give them what they want, it might end badly." "What do they want?" I breathed, my voice barely a whisper as I glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were wide with terror. "Just hold on to each other," Mark whispered, his confidence flickering in and out like a dying flame. The intruders began shouting, demanding cash and valuables, but there was something deeper, a current pooling beneath their orders that felt sinister and intent. I prayed we wouldn't be broken by their hands, but even more, I feared the secrets that hung in the air like puppets on strings. "Mark, listen to me," Evelyn said, focusing her attention back on him, urgency dripping from her every word. "You need to get out of here. I can distract them." "Just run, I'll lead them away." Mark shook his head. "No, I won't leave you." My heart soared for a moment, the strain of loyalty and love flashing brightly before the reality clawed at the edges of our hopes. What if we never saw each other again? What if we lost our bond forever, not just to the chaos outside but to the very intricacies that bound us together? "I won't let you do this alone," I almost shouted, desperation spilling from my lips. "Just trust me." Evelyn's voice shook through the tension before a gunshot rang out, piercing the air and causing chaos to erupt once more. The cafe exploded into panic as shouts filled the air. I stumbled backward, clinging to Mark, my heart pounding relentlessly as I sought a way out. The sound reverberated in my bones, the finality of it crackling like thunder overhead, promising that none of us would escape unscathed. And then, amidst the chaos, a voice recognizable yet shocking cut through the noise. "Stop. This is over." A tall figure stepped into the doorway, his face obscured but undeniably familiar. It was Jack, my best friend's brother, the one I had lost touch with after he took over the family business and reshaped his life in unimaginable ways. "Jack." I gasped, feeling my heart twist in both relief and confusion. "What are you doing here?" His gaze fell on me for only a moment before shifting to the intruders, certainty mingling with power. "You're making a mistake. Let them go." Fear met confusion, mingling together to create uncertainty. With Mark and Evelyn by my side, the tension hummed, an electric wave ripping through me. Whatever unfolded, it was clear the stakes had just risen. Our secrets were no longer just ours, they were wrapped up in Jack's world too, an impending storm waiting to collide. And suddenly, the chaos surrounding us seemed far more real, ominous bright light casting shadows that showed us the truths we had yet to confront. Everything swirled around me like fallen leaves caught in a restless autumn wind. The gunfire still echoed in my ears, a reminder of our fragility, but Jack's sudden appearance ignited both hope and confusion within me. "You're making a mistake," he had said with a steadying assurance, a stark contrast to the terror cloaking the cafe. Mark's hand tightened around mine as we stood against the wall, shadows casting their elongated forms as we awaited the unfolding drama. "Do you know him?" he asked, his breath warm against my ear, grounding me just a bit amidst the chaos. "Eyes, my best friend's brother," I managed to say, struggling to connect two worlds that felt alien to one another now. I dared a glance at Jack, who stood firm, the weight of his words clinging to the air like smoke. He was stepping forward, closing the distance between himself and the armed men, exuding a confidence that seemed almost otherworldly. "Get back!" one of the intruders shouted, his voice jagged with anger and fear. Jack continued forward, unfazed, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the world shrank to just the two of the men, unyielding force meeting chaos head-on. But this was no fairy tale, my reality was mired in darkness. Fear churned in my stomach as I sensed the tides shifting. What if Jack's presence only worsened our fate? What if he wasn't the savior here but merely a pawn, drawn into deeper waters than he ever intended to wade into? "Please, you don't have to do this," Jack continued, his voice steady, though I detected a tremor beneath the surface. "Let the hostages go. We can work this out." There was a pause, palpable and smothering, as the intruders exchanged glances, suspicion knitting their brows. One of them, broader than the others, took a half-step backward, as if the balance of power suddenly tipped in Jack's favor. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he spat, the edge of panic lacing his words. Before Jack could respond, something shifted within me, a surge of urgency that compelled me to act. "Jack, wait!" I shouted, stepping forward, courage blossoming in my chest, fueled by fear but ignited by something else, an innate resolve to fight for those I loved. "Don't!" Mark called, but I was already moving, my voice breaking through the cacophony. "They don't want a fight. Just let this end." For a moment, time stilled. The intruders looked at each other, and I could see their resolve wavering, uncertainty flickering like candlelight in the wind. But the weight of their weapons, the violence with which they had burst into our lives, remained a heavy threat at I and the periphery. I caught sight of Sarah, huddled against the floor, eyes wide with tears, mirroring the small, innocent version of myself I had long forgotten. That buried child within me cried out for protection. Every heartbeat carried the echo of other times, times before everything had changed. Within this chaos, I wanted to anchor us back to simpler moments, to the laughter and friendships that had defined our youth. Then, unexpectedly, another voice interjected, shrill and bewildered. It was Evelyn, eyes fierce but hands raised. "You don't have to do this. We just want to go home, home." For a fleeting moment, I found solace in that word, that concept. It spoke to safety, love, and tranquility, all the elements that once seemed out of reach. But before I could let the peace settle in my heart, one of the intruders barked, "Shut up. You think we're afraid of some kids playing rebellion? You don't know what we're capable of." He raised his gun, pointing it straight at Jack.No. I shouted, launching myself forward as if I could somehow deflect the impending violence with sheer will alone. "Stop. Please, we can resolve this, get down." Mark shouted just before the sound of gunfire thundered through the cafe again. Time slowed. My body bowed instinctively as I stumbled backward, tearing away from Mark, fear splintering any notion of protection. The world exploded in chaos around me, glass shattering, screams harmonizing with one desperate cry. I felt the ground shift, and in an instant, everything changed. The haze of confusion swallowed my vision as I collided with the rustic wooden table, sending the remnants of plates crashing to the floor, my heart racing. Then, I heard it again, a whisper amidst the pandemonium, a sound so familiar it pierced through the cacophony. I heard Mark calling for me, his voice laced with panic and urgency. "Clara. Clara, where are you?" His voice reverberated through the noise, but I couldn't turn back. I was grappling with a tangible fear, a gnawing realization that I may be the very one to push this situation to its breaking point. I stumbled through the chaos, searching for an exit, willing my body to move, to protect or perhaps to flee, but before I could catch my breath, I found myself face to face with Jack and the leader of the intruders, the tension screaming at us, and suddenly, something indescribable crackled between us, a silent recognition binding our fates together. Then it happened. I saw the glint of a knife at Jack's waist, a knife that had been hidden from view all along. A jolt of understanding coursed through me. This wasn't just about a heist, this was a collision of old antagonisms, old patterns of pain. Jack was not just here to save us, was trapped in a tangled web of secrets that he couldn't escape easily. Frozen, heart pounding, I waited for the pendulum to swing, for the precarious balance of our lives to tip toward chaos or salvation. In that charged moment, it felt as if the answers would soon crash down hard around us, whether wanted or not. "Don't!" I shouted, the word escaping my lips like a breaking dam. Whatever resolve had been holding me together began to fray, spiraling into an unknown abyss. "Please, don't hurt anyone else," and as both the threats and the stakes raised higher, something in the atmosphere shifted again. We were teetering on the verge, caught between the expected and the unpredictable, the silence before the storm about to release its fury, and I knew that my world was unraveling right before my eyes. The chaos surged around me, each heartbeat resonating like a desperate drum, amplifying my dread. I clutched at the edges of my sanity as fear intermingled with uncertainty. My eyes darted between Jack and the furious intruder stepping toward him, imposing and aggressive as he raised his weapon. "Clara!" Mark's voice rang out again, a lifeline that tethered me against the tide of panic. "Get down!" Shaking, I forced myself to look back. Mark was crouched low, his face a mask of determination intertwined with terror. In the back of my mind, I registered Evelyn crouched beside him, tears streaming down her face, unable to tear her gaze from the unfolding nightmare. I was painfully aware that the only barrier between us and the violence was the thin veil of willful hope. "Jack!" I cried, a desperate urgency in my tone, like a plea to the cosmos, praying to deflect the impending storm. But even in that moment, deep down, a voice whispered, asking me to consider what that knife at his waist signified. Was he truly here to protect us, or was something darker tying him to these men? Time elongated, an eternity encased in seconds, as the tension in the air coiled tighter around us. Jack's jaw clenched, his gaze flaring with the flicker of defiance. "It doesn't have to end like this," he insisted, but even his voice wavered, proving his bravado was laced with vulnerability. Then I saw with hesitation in the barking aggressor's stance, the flicker of doubt. My heart raced. Perhaps there was a chance, a chink in their confidence that we could exploit. I took a shaky breath, pulling all the courage I could muster. "Please, just step back. We can talk about this. Everyone just wants to go home." Again, silence draped us, oppressive and raw, as the man, an undercurrent of confusion roiling in his eyes, gripped his weapon tightly, glancing toward the others, a silent committee deciding our fate. I don't know what made me do it, but the words poured from my mouth, candid and raw. "You know what it feels like to be afraid, don't you? To feel like you don't have control of your own fate?" I could see his hardened exterior cracking under the weight of honesty, but before I could build on it, Jack's voice sliced through. "Clara, don't!" He shouted, urgency fueling his warning, a command born out of both desperation and fear for my safety. He was worried for me, worried for the way I had stepped onto this treacherous path, and yet, another presence, one of kinship and warmth, tilted my compulsion to act. It was Sarah, who crawled closer on the floor, eyes sparkling with determination that belied her size. "Maybe we can help," she whispered, her voice barely audible but rising with gentle intensity. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want to be safe." Staring into her innocent gaze bolstered my resolve. It struck me how powerful the shared vulnerability of our youth mirrored the gravity of our present situation. We hadn't ceased to care for one another despite the world trying to tear us apart. The strength of our bond settled around me, forming a fragile shield against the encroaching violence. "Yeah," I echoed, my voice stronger now, emboldened by Sarah's solidarity. "We get it. Life is hard. We just want to live like you." I held his gaze steady, heart aflame with hope. It was like the air had shifted yet again, an uneasy truce forming in this violent swirl of life and desperation. Quiet murmurs passed among the intruders, their communication an unspoken struggle between intimidation and hesitation. Yet just as the moment seemed to teeter toward some semblance of resolution, the leader thrust forward, eyes widening with fury. "Enough of this." His voice pierced through the hopeful air like a blade, and before anyone could react, he turned, pointing the gun toward the vulnerable group huddled behind Mark. "Back up!" he shouted, his panic exploding at the seams as he realized his grip on the situation was slipping. No longer was it a mere heist, desperation surged through him. "Wait." Jack's voice broke through, but this time, inevitability clung to the air, the breath left my lungs as I witnessed it. A bead of sweat rolled down the leader's temple, and in that chaotic heartbeat, his finger curled tighter around the trigger, and then it happened. A flash from the corner of my eye, the knife slipped from Jack's belt, and before I could comprehend its trajectory, he lunged. In a series of stark movements, he broke through the tension that had tied us all to the ground. Yet, it was the ricochet of a bullet that shattered the anticipated calm. A deafening roar echoed as the gun fired, a dark truth weaving itself through my racing thoughts, a single, raw moment suspended in time as my entire world compressed into that lethal sound, threatening to tear apart every last strand of connection I had with hope. No. I heard myself scream, but the echo of the shot rang loud, drowning out all reason. As chaos unleashed around me, time lost its meaning, and I felt myself slipping toward an abyss, teetering on the edge of an intricate web of love and betrayal. Lives were about to change irrevocably, and I stood frozen, knowing that what lay ahead could very well rip apart everything I believed in. Amidst the chaos, with the thunderous roar of the gunshot still reverberating in my ears, clarity struck like lightning in a storm. I felt the world tilt, painfully out of balance, and I barely registered the scene unfolding before me. Jack had lunged at the figure, wrestling to wrest control away from him. Evelyn's sobs crumbled into an indiscernible murmur while Mark lay flat against the floor, protecting Sarah, his body a shield that couldn't absorb the impending horror. I shook, paralyzed, as reality blurred with the impending doom that lurked in the shadows. Suddenly, the world compressed into a cruel focus as I stood stranded between the gallant struggle of Jack and the frantic chaos emanating from our would-be attackers. The air felt thick, viscous, clouding my thoughts, a churning vortex of fear and uncertainty that threatened to drown me once and for all. Through a haze of adrenaline, I saw a glimmer of hope. Amid the furious tussle between Jack and the leader, a fragment of humanity flickered in the eyes of one of the intruders, a young man, perhaps my age, who stood frozen, a microcosm of uncertainty against the swell of violence. He wasn't like the others, something deep within him stirred with empathy, a flicker of struggle against the choices laid before him. I stepped forward, heart pounding, closer to the young man. "You don't have to do this," I pleaded, each word a fragile thread woven from the fabric of my deepest fears. "You can still walk away." For a fleeting moment, he met my gaze, and in that electric moment, something shifted. I caught a glimpse of a person, not a villain, someone who bore scars of his own. His breath quickened as he shifted his weight back and forth, caught between the brotherhood of crime and the lure of a life unburdened by bloodshed. "Help us," I whispered, the words rushing out like a prayer, the weight of each syllable hanging in the air like a lifeline. "You don't have to choose this." Just as dawn breaks through a long night, I could see realization flicker in his eyes, a semblance of humanity rising against the tide. But the moment was shattered when the leader cursed, his ferocity igniting a fire around us. "Don't listen to her. We have what we came for." His voice was a tempest, but beneath his bravado, I detected the threads of doubt fraying at the edges. He was faltering, losing his grip on the situation, and desperation clawed at him like the cruelest of fates. And just like that, with a frantic pull, the young man staggered back, hands trembling at his sides. I am not sure anymore," he whispered, the conflict written clear across his face. As Jack fought bravely, the sounds of the struggle, the scuffling, the grunts, the cries, filled the air like shards of glass churning within my heart. I felt the tears spill over, blurring my vision with a mix of sorrow and anger. How had we ended up here, teetering on this precipice of futility and despair? Tension built in the room, and Jack's voice rose, shaking with determination. "Let them go. This wasn't the plan. But the leader's eyes were wild with fury, a storm brewing within. "Shut up!" he spat, shoving Jack back violently. The crack of his skull echoed, and time warped again, stretching the seconds into agonizing eternities. Then came a moment of divine serendipity. Amidst the fray, the young intruder past the brink of indecision took a step forward, trembling. "Stop! You can't do this!" he roared, shaking off his fear like a burden fallen. It was this unexpected surge of unexpected kindness that sparked new embers of hope within the chaos. But just as we might have clutched at that hope, revelations sliced through the air. "You think this is just about you?" the leader bellowed, contempt dripping from his voice. "This is bigger than all of us, you fool. You follow orders blindly." In that instant, just as clarity flickered in the young man's eyes, the leader turned on him. Desperation clouded his actions. "You want to see suffering?" Within the heartbeat of that exchange, when time itself seemed to bend, I realized no one here was untouched by pain. We were all mere marionettes dancing in a tragic play orchestrated by fate. Before I could fully process the implications, the leader lunged at the young man, hands reaching for him with the fierce intensity of a storm. Suddenly, the world erupted into a clamor, a deafening cry, hands grappling, a table overturned, and the deafening crack of another gunshot, then silence. An eerie stillness blanketed the room. I blinked, shock rippling through my veins like ice, choking against disbelief as I took in the scene, only to find the young man collapsed on the floor, a dark crimson bloom spreading beneath him, a grim testament to choices made and trails crossed. No. My scream echoed hollowly, a raw, plaintive cry bursting from my soul. As everything turned to ash, I stumbled forward, my stomach twisting like a crude knife, heart threatening to shatter. But in the face of devastation, as those around me scrambled into chaos, I realized I was no longer just a bystander. Deep down, I understood that the weight of secrets surged with the aftermath of that gunshot, and hidden truths began to unfurl, perilous yet fragile, trapping me on this harrowing edge. In the depths of my grief, a question echoed louder than the silence around meth weight of Jack's actions, of the ties that bound us together and bound us apart, pulled my heart into tumultuous uncertainty. Was he protector or traitor? Was our moment of clarity only the beginning of a darker path? As I crumbled to the ground beside the fallen intruder, panic rippling through the air, I felt the collective weight of uncertainty crash upon me, a heavy realization that nothing would be the same again. The chaos settled like dust around us, and in that silence, one truth emerged, a secret darker than any of us had comprehended hovered just beyond the horizon, ready to shatter everything we knew. The room pulsed with an eerie quiet, each tick of the clock slicing through the heavy air, amplifying the gaping void left in the wake of the young man's fall. Time seemed to stretch into an infinite expanse, drawing me deeper into a maelstrom of sorrow intertwined with confusion. I couldn't tear my gaze away from his still figure, the blood pooling around him a stark reminder of life's fragility, how quickly everything could change, spiraling into darkness without a hint of mercy. Jack's voice broke through my reverie, ragged but insistent. "We need to get out of here." He was at my side now, fingers gripping my shoulder, but even in his urgency, a tremor of fear betrayed his facade. Those moments spent frozen in disbelief had left imprints on shadows of doubt that now danced in the corners of my mind. The chaos at the other end of the room surged like a wave, each cry and grunt reverberating, yet everything felt muted, faded into the background as the weight of the young man's sacrifice loomed large. I struggled to comprehend the reality that had unfolded before me. "Jack, we can't just leave him," I whispered, my voice choked with a cocktail of despair and disbelief. "He chose to stand up, he didn't deserve this." "Neither do we," he shot back, his eyes fierce with determination and apprehension coiling around his heart. "We can honor his choice by surviving." Something inside me rebelled against that logic. The leader had grabbed the opportunity of chaos to slip away, chaos spilling like ink across the pages of our lives. I glanced at Evelyn and Mark, who hovered near Sarah, her face pale, a reflection of my own dread. We were all caught in this web, but where was the way out? In the thick tension, Evelyn knelt beside me, her gaze steady yet wild with panic. "We need to go. We can't stay here." Her words tugged at my heart, mingling with my growing sense of foreboding. I wanted to reach for the hope embedded in the young intruder's final act, to believe that somewhere amidst the sorrow, redemption existed, and yet I felt the strings of my own reality slipping, fraying further at the edges as I realized the implications of that one moment, the complexity of messages left unspoken, the ties that bound us together, even as our paths diverged. This wasn't merely about survival anymore, it had stirred something deeper, unanswered questions echoing inside me like a hollow drum in an empty hall. As I rose slowly, my thoughts flickering back to the fleeting moment we shared, I couldn't shake the feeling of urgency, a whisper of something unfinished, a haunting voice coaxing me to dig deeper, to seek out the hidden truths that lay cloaked in the aftermath of violence. What had the young intruder tried to tell me? There had been something in the way he hesitated, something tugging at the back of his mind. But Jack's call for escape pulled me back to the present. "Harper, we can't afford to be bold." "Not now," he urged, glancing toward the doorway, a passageway that seemed so unremarkable yet could lead us away from a simmering nightmare. Clinging to Jack's resolve, part of me wished for the chance to turn back. But facing the silence behind us felt impossible, a burden too heavy to contemplate. I nodded, fear wresting control back into my hands, and turned to follow Jack, whose desperate glance bore into the murky depths of my own confusion. As we edged toward the exit, something tugged at my chest. The shadows whispered the unsaid, unraveling hints of truths veiled by loyalties and buried secrets. "Jack, wait," I said, feeling the heavy weight of impact and implication in my words. "What do you know about him?" The intruder, he seemed, but before I could finish, the sudden crash of the door swung open, sending a blast of cold air and chaos crashing in upon us. I stumbled back, heart racing, as our eyes met once more. The silhouette framed in the doorway sent shockwaves through my heart. The leader stood there, breathless, wild-eyed with a fury like a caged beast unleashed, and it was clear he hadn't come back alone. "Get down." Jack's instinct kicked in, pulling me behind him, but already a deafening voice thundered through the chaos. "You think you can just walk away?" Not so easy, lovebirds. In that moment, as panic surged around us, the questions swirled faster, filling the spaces left vacant by decisions gone awry. Who was the real enemy here? As the shrouded darkness of secrets began to tighten around us, pushing me back toward inevitability, a sharp realization cut through it all. The truth could be as deadly as the weapon that shot the innocent, and I found myself spiraling deeper into a treacherous maze, with no exit in sight. And just before the world erupted into chaos anew, the chilling touch of an unseen thread connected me to the pieces of the puzzle. What if the leader knew the truth about us? About Jack and me? As the air crackled with the brink of another confrontation, I felt my resolve buckle, me heart pounded with the need to understand. What shocking revelations awaited us, and how would my past entwine with this unforeseen present? The world felt suspended, into me a stillness mixed with desperation, a ticking clock echoing louder than the chaos surrounding us. The warmth of sunlight spilling through the cafe windows felt silenced, eclipsed by the dread that now defined our reality. I turned, expectation mixing with fear, hoping to grasp some semblance of control. But reality forged ahead, loomed larger than any of us could comprehend. Jack stood strong, the anger radiating from him like an ember, ready to ignite, yet I could sense his fear coiling tightly around him. I could feel Mark's presence nearby, his unwavering determination anchoring us in this storm. My heart shuddered at the thought of another confrontation, another eruption of violence, but the shadows of countless choices hung like smoke in the air, suffocating the hope of escape. "Drop the weapon," Jack shouted, his voice a firm command, steadfast against the encroaching darkness. But the leader merely laughed, an eerie, mocking sound that cut through the air, dripping with venom. "You think you can control this? You're just children playing at bravery," he sneered, his eyes scanning the room and fixating on me. A shiver raced down my spine as dread knotted in my gut. Wordlessly, I pleaded with the universe to shield us. "You don't have to do this," I whispered, knowing too well the perilous path we traversed, begging for the tiniest flicker of empathy to ignite. Please, the leader's gaze slipped briefly from Jack, and I caught a glimmer of uncertainty flicker across his features. For an instant, it felt like we were all victims of circumstance, each damnation threading us together in a tapestry of fears and half-finished stories. But that moment was fleeting, lost when another figure burst through the door behind the leaden NYPD officer, poised, stern, weapon drawn, eyes surveying the chaos. FBI. Everyone, freeze! They barked, the authority of the proclamation slicing through the tension and sending shockwaves rippling backward. The café froze into silencia tableau vivant where every heartbeat pulsed like a reckoning. In that breathless moment, a flickering thought ignited the corners of my mind, a realization that clutched at my heart. Perhaps the facade of normalcy we had built around our lives had eroded long ago. Perhaps we were never truly safe, only oblivious to the fate that loomed closer than we could bear. And with that, a surge of resilience coursed through me. We're innocent. I yelled, the plea tearing itself from my throat as I stepped forward, adrenaline carving a resolute path through my fear. We didn't choose this. You can't let this madness define us. The seats of power shifted uneasily, a ripple of realization coursing through the room that I didn't dare to turn back as I pressed on, each word a lifeline extending into vulnerable truth. This isn't just about survival but reclaiming our voices. We all deserve a chance to rewrite our fate. At that, the air thickened with uncertainty, the raw honesty setting it ablaze. Before the leader could respond, a shout erupted from the other end of the coffee. A body rushed forward. It was Evelyn. In that chaotic moment, she braved the distance, determination fueling her every step. You're stronger together, she called out, her voice cracking but unwavering. We are not just bystanders. Unite with us. The potency of her words woven with the untold truths of our lives pierced through the shadowy web encasing us all. One by one, heads turned, eyes locked among us, creating an unbreakable link between shared experience and the urgency to protect one another, and as if time honored the weight of our declaration, a breath of unity seeped into the air. Unable to resist, even the young intruder who had fallen began to stir where he lay. You don't have to remain tethered by your choices, he murmured, voice strained but filled with sincerity. We were all tangled in this nightmare. But perhaps from it, we could find solace, or at the very least, redemption even from the depths of our sins. Together we can change this. Mark's voice rang out, clarity breaking through the chaos. Your fear doesn't define you, this is your chance. Choose differently. It felt as if every heartbeat aligned, truths unfurling through the passage of souls, the cadence of voices rising above the restlessness. And as the unthinkable unfolded, I caught a hint of humanity reflected in the leader's eyes, an echo that materialized like a long-lost parent seeking connection. Is it worth it? He whispered, falteringly unsure of his own escalating desperation. Do you truly believe there can be a different ending? In that moment, courage thrummed through us all, wrapping around our broken pieces. Yes, I breathed, every word lining my resolve. Your past doesn't dictate your future. We're all capable of change, of healing. Lay down your weapon and join us. The air around us felt pregnant with the weight of his decision, and as he hesitated, just for a fraction of a breath, hope surged within me. Perhaps we could rewrite the narratives threading through our lives, unearth the truths buried in our hearts. But what if he didn't see the light? Just walk away, I murmured, moving closer, drawing closer to the precipice of vulnerability. Let us find out who we are, separate from these labels. Don't let fear be your only guide. Silence blanketed the room, thick like fog, each individual caught in their own whirlwind of confusion. For that illuminating instant, it felt like faith dwelled within us all. And I realized the most surprising truth was that forgiveness can weave pathways we once thought impossible, knitting souls together in the unlikeliest of ways. Then he dropped the gun. An eruption of breaths escaped everyone present, hearts racing as time froze, holding on to this fragile hope, a collective sigh of relief cascading through us. The leader stumbled backward, overwhelmed by his own tumultuous revelation, and in the silence, honesty crested, leading to a crescendo of connection igniting within us. Eyes met, hands found one another, and just like that, tensions unraveled. From that paradox of bravery emerged a stunning truth: every scar is evidence of a battle waged, but when woven together, they form a beautiful tapestry of resilience. The echoes of our choices resonated loudly, reminding us, we are not merely the products of our past, we are artists of our future, and as I took the hands of Jack and Mark, drawn into their unwavering solace, I finally understood real strength rises in unity, and with love, healing can begin. Hope still glimmered brightly beneath the devastation, urging us onward. As a final breath echoed through the walls of that cafe, the words that fled my trembling lips lingered in the air, a peaceful promise to our fractured souls: in the face of our storms, we shall find the light, together. In that moment, as the sun beamed in through the fractured cafe windows, illuminating the path ahead, I felt the warmth of countless hearts joining in the rhythm of change, a dawning realization that love could transcend even the darkest of secrets, forging bonds within the fires of shared humanity, paving the way to something beautiful. And it was then I understood, regardless of what had come before, the power of choice forever rested in our hands. And with that acknowledgement came the undeniable gift of tomorrow, sealed in the laughter of unbroken hope, ready to rise anew.